Born back in northwestern coast of Sicily, Joe Bonanno moved to Brooklyn and settled in a neighborhood called Williamsburg for about 10 years before returning to Italy. Bonanno slipped on a Cuban fishing boat bound for Tampa, Florida in 1924 by stowing away after being an active mafia youth in Italy and fleeing after Benito Mussolini initiated a crackdown. Later in life, he claimed he was ardently anti-fascist as part of the reasoning for leaving once he gained his reputation, but this may have just been an attempt to make it seem more respectable since several other Castellamarese mafiosi fled to the United States around the same time as he did. Initially, he became involved in bootlegging activities with the mafia family led by Salvatore Maranzano. Young and quite inexperienced, he formed part of the Maranzano family and was the youngest of the leaders at 22 years old. He didn't hesitate to keep his men in line, commanding his organization and ordering murders as he was an ambitious, ruthless, and dangerous mob boss already. Clever and sophisticated, Bonanno helped direct his organization into prostitution, gambling, loan sharking, and racketeering in Buffalo. Almost from the beginning, he became known for his leadership in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and was recognized by his accomplices as a man with superior organizational skills and quick instincts. Following closely to the old-fashioned family model demonstrated by his uncle Giuseppe back in the old country, Joseph Bonanno strongly believed blood relations and a strict Sicilian upbringing could be the only way to hold the traditional values of La Cosa Nostra together. By 1922, Joe Dicarlo became the underboss of the Buffalo family, but ultimately became the most powerful opponent of Stefano the Undertaker Magaddino. Magaddino retained him as his underboss in order to maintain peace with the Dicarlo faction and his supporters, as he was the son of the Buffalo region's original Sicilian boss, Giuseppe Dicarlo. Benedetto Angelo Palmeri, born January 12, 1878, to Francesco and Anna Calecha Palmeri in Castellamarese del Golfo, Sicily. Francesco was a successful merchant, and Angelo Palmeri was raised in an upper-middle-class family. Palmeri traveled to the United States as an adult. He reached New York City aboard the SS Lombardia on September 7, 1906. He initially found work in that city as a laborer on the docks. In 1912, he relocated to Buffalo and opened a tavern on Dante Place. He supplemented his income by hosting gambling operations. Palmeri was one of 11 saloon keepers arrested during an August 28, 1912 gambling raid by Buffalo police in the Canal District. He was convicted and fined $50. Palmeri married Rosaria Mistretta on October 5, 1913. Mistretta was a cousin of Buffalo mob boss Giuseppe Dicarlo's wife, Vincenza. By the end of the year, the newlywed Palmeris moved into the upper apartment of the Dicarlo family home on Buffalo's 7th Street. There followed a period of unquestionable closeness between Angelo Palmeri and Giuseppe Dicarlo. The two men entered into a partnership in the Dante Place saloon, and Palmeri served as underboss in Dicarlo's underworld organization. Their methods of operation were different, noted the police. Dicarlo being a smooth, peaceful worker, and Palmeri more inclined to violence. They provided mutual protection for each other. Palmeri's violent tendencies resulted in a 1915 arrest for assaulting a police officer. He was convicted and fined $250. His reputation was enhanced by the nickname Buffalo Bill, reportedly awarded to him because he wore cowboy hats and carried a holstered pistol. Just a few months later, Rosaria Palmeri gave birth to a daughter. When the child was baptized in November 1915, two of Giuseppe Dicarlo's children, Joseph and Sarah, served as godparents. Rosaria Palmeri subsequently developed serious health problems. She contracted influenza and pneumonia and died on January 5, 1916, at the age of 29. Unable to tend to the needs of his infant daughter on his own, Angelo Palmeri left her in the care of his Mistretta in-laws in New York City. His family life in tatters, Palmeri moved away from Buffalo and opened a cigar store in Niagara Falls. The store served as a front for gambling rackets run in association with the Dicarlo Mafia. Future New Jersey crime figure Willie Moretti reportedly got his start in the underworld by operating craps games for Palmeri in Niagara Falls. In 1919, Palmeri married Loretta Mistretta, the older sister of his late wife. The couple and Palmeri's daughter by his first marriage moved into a Niagara Falls apartment. The Prohibition era opened that following year, and Palmeri's brother, Paul, joined him in Niagara Falls to organize mafia bootlegging rackets. The Palmeris worked with the Siriani brothers, Don Simone Baruso, Joseph Satilli, and Canadian crime boss Rocco Perry, to control the smuggling of liquor between Canada and western New York. In 1921, Angelo Palmeri was charged with the murder of Emilio Nazzo. Nazzo was shot by a gunman who jumped from behind a car and fired a bullet into his head. The victim's wife witnessed the killing and identified Palmeri as the gunman. A police investigation determined that Nazzo, an inveterate gambler, was slow to repay a loan obtained from Palmeri. When the murder case came to trial, prosecutors could not locate Nazzo's wife. No other witnesses came forward to identify Palmeri as the gunman, and Palmeri was discharged due to insufficient evidence. Following the death of Giuseppe Dicarlo, Angelo Palmeri returned to the city of Buffalo. He moved himself and his family into the Dicarlo residence and temporarily took command of the mafia organization in western New York. In October of that year, Stefano Magaddino was chosen as the next regional mafia boss. Palmeri, Filippo Mazzara, and Giuseppe De Benedetto, all Castellamarese mafiosi who held leadership positions under Dicarlo, oversaw Buffalo underworld rackets for Magaddino. Palmeri used his influence in the Sicilian community to provide aid to the poor and emotionally devastated family of Joseph Gervasi. The 12-year-old Gervasi had been molested and strangled to death by a drifter. Palmeri, Mazzara, and De Benedetto gathered donations from the shopkeepers in Buffalo's Italian colony to pay the boys' funeral expenses. Federal prohibition agents raided a Palmeri speakeasy in August 1928, arresting Palmeri and confiscating a large quantity of spirits. The Prohibition era brought vast profits to underworld organizations, but it also brought violence, as rival bootlegging groups entered into bloody competition. Gangland conflict cost Palmeri a close ally in Cleveland and 2 western New York lieutenants. Cleveland mob boss Joseph Leonardo was murdered in October 1927. Salvatore Black Sam Todaro and the Perello brothers. Later that year, Filippo Mazzara was murdered in Buffalo. In February 29th, Giuseppe De Benedetto was slain. A bootlegging gang led by the Calleja brothers was suspected in the Buffalo attacks. The Callejas, closely aligned with the Perellos of Cleveland, sought to control bootlegging rackets in the Buffalo region. Paolo Paul Palmeri, with his 2 brothers, arrived in New York City at the age of 16. He arrived in New York City on February 27, 1909. He moved into the Italian colony of Lower Manhattan and became employed as a barber. He married Elena Helen Curti in 1914. Palmeri's best man was Silvio Tagliagambe, a subordinate of the U.S. Mafia boss of all bosses, Salvatore Toto d'Aquila. Tagliagambe was shot to death in 1922. Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masseria, a D'Aquila rival, was charged with the murder. Paul Palmeri moved from New York City to Niagara Falls in 1920. There he assisted his brother Angelo with the organization of bootlegging rackets. The Palmeri brothers, in association with the Siriani brothers, Don Simone Baruso, Joseph H. Satilli, and Canadian crime boss Rocco Perry, controlled the flow of illegal liquor into the U.S. from Canada. At the same time, Paul and Angelo Palmeri went into business together as produce importers and commission merchants. In 1922, Angelo left Niagara Falls for Buffalo, where he temporarily assumed control of the local mafia organization following the death of boss Giuseppe Dicarlo. Paul Palmeri was naturalized a U.S. citizen in 1923, and his character witness for his 1922 citizen application was the notorious bootlegger Joseph H. Satilli. In 1928, Palmeri went into a new line of work, partnering with Alfred Penapinto in the Penapinto and Palmeri Funeral Home in Niagara Falls. By that time, Palmeri was a trusted member of a New York mafia organization commanded by Stefano Magaddino. After Prohibition ended, the Buffalo family continued to make money at gambling, loan sharking, and labor racketeering as they branched out their influence stateside and in Canada. Then, in the late 1930s, Magadino began to associate with John Charles Montana of the Empire State Brewery from Olean. Montana was Magadino's second in command. Palmeri was active in the local chapter of the Castellamarese del Golfo Society. The group's 25th anniversary in 1939 was marked with a ball and a banquet at the Hotel Lafayette in Buffalo. Stefano Magadino held the position of banquet general chairman. John C. Montana, president of the local Mondadoro Society and Magadino's underboss, was an honored guest speaker at the event. Paul Palmeri served as toastmaster and praised the accomplishments of prominent Italian Americans in the region. Magadino's underboss, John Montana, developed his keen ability of resourcefulness at an early age with his brothers Salvatore, Angelo, Peter, and Joseph. The 17-year-old John Montana pushed a popcorn cart through Buffalo's Little Italy at a time when Italians lived in a high-density area in Lower West Side and downtown. Because the demand was so great, the Montana brothers had to shut down their first business as they couldn't supply the many people who wanted their goods. Eventually, John joined Don Stefano Magadino's criminal empire and rose in the ranks as he got his niece to marry Don Stefano's only son and also set up his nephew, Charles, with Don Stefano's oldest daughter. John was more of an influential businessman than a mafioso. He formed Buffalo Taxi Company to enter into Buffalo's booming transportation industry, and then bought and merged with the Yellow Cab Company to try and consolidate the cars and call centers and eliminate taxi competition. He had the support of his community, especially among leading Italians and prominent Buffalonians, and was given the nod to run for city's common council. He was first elected representative from the Niagara district in 1927 and then re-elected again in 1929. For 4 years, Montana served the city of Buffalo. On the council, he was the chairman of the Housing and Slum Clearance Committee, which gave his mafia associates a direct influence over where people lived and what reconstruction efforts would be made. He also served as a chairman of the Labor Relations and Compensation Committee, allegedly giving the mafia some influence in different unions in the area. While his role in the Magadino Mafia was never made public during his time in office, and he was applauded for his civic achievements. Hannah Montana must have got her name from him because he lived a double life as both trusted advisor to the mafia's kingpin and a trusted advisor to the mayor. In fact, when Mayor Schwab, German former brewer turned mayor, who was raided for booze during Prohibition and had died while sitting as mayor, he was fighting hard to create the first public buses in Buffalo. Most leading businessmen in the transportation industry opposed the idea to public busing, which would take passengers away from taxis, trolleys, and trains. John Montana, however, used his political influence to secure a sweetheart contract furnishing the first ever buses in Buffalo with seats, cushions, and everything else needed on board. He created the Montana Company, which was awarded the first bus furnishing contract in the city's controversial push for public transportation. While a city councilman, Montana saw the opening of the Buffalo Airport in Cheektowaga. He allegedly passed legislation regarding the opening of the Peace Bridge, Buffalo's international gateway into Canada. He was instrumental in overseeing the 2-year-long construction of the Newark Central Station, which was a 17-floor combination office and terminal building on the east side. He passed legislation to build the new City Hall building, still a landmark among Buffalo's downtown skyline. Many major changes came to the Queen City during his time as a political leader, and John Montana made sure that his hidden partnerships never came to light, while still placing people in positions to reap the benefits of the construction and transportation boom. Montana's taxis, for instance, were given a sweetheart contract to be the sole cab operators at the new Central Terminal Station. 200 trains a day were said to go through Buffalo, and Montana's taxis were the only ones allowed to pick up passengers that wanted a ride. Buffalo police even ticketed and towed other cab companies that sought fares from the train station. During a successful re-election season for Montana, the councilman was involved in a major business deal that left him as the most powerful taxi tycoon in the area. In late June 1929, Montana, who had previously acquired the Yellow Taxi Company, convinced Fred Van Dyke to give up his business, the largest cab competitors in western New York. As a business-savvy communicator, John Montana informed city riders that while he now owned the second largest cab company in the state, he would keep fares the same as they were with the Yellow Cab Company, 50 cents for the first mile and 10 cents for the next 3 miles. For years, taxi operators complained that Montana maintained a monopoly on taxi Buffalo, and some claimed that the other taxi companies that were smaller in town were run by associates of Montana who kept businesses going solely to save Montana's companies from anti-monopoly legal proceedings. While accusations were rare and unconfirmed, some opinions stated Montana's cabs were corrupt. While working at a legitimate and successful business, Van Dyke drivers were said at times to transport gambling paraphernalia and liquor. In the decades of Prohibition on the Niagara frontier, between 100 and 150 people were killed in mafia-related slayings. Another 125 to 150 people died drinking poisoned alcohol. But while many of Montana's associates were involved in bootlegging, the councilman was never linked to the alcohol trade until after the noble experiment of Prohibition was proven a failure and repealed. During the decade of illegal alcohol, Montana's important role with Stefano Magaddino's mafia family was never discovered.